Welcome, everybody. It's Ken, and I'm here with Nomad Capitalists, and we're talking to Andrew Henderson, and he's going to help you guys a lot today. We get a lot of questions around tax and a lot of, especially now with Biden coming into office. And Andrew, I saw you had a really good video that's gone kind of viral about when Joe Biden got elected, and
Yeah.
you guys, it's crazy. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So I know you guys probably know that taxes are definitely going to be the number one expense in your lifetime. There's no question about it. And so Andrew has legally reduced his taxes from 43% to 1%. He's got a great book called Nomad Capitalist. You can find it on Amazon. Andrew, welcome.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So I've invested in Mexico, and I know I had to go through that fideicomiso process, and I know a lot of people now, especially with all the migration patterns around the United States that we're starting to see, and people are moving. I was looking this morning, the state tax rate, like in California, is like 13%, and in New York it's 8.8, and I'm in Arizona, it's 4.5, and people are kind of moving around, based on the limited amount of money that they have. And I know a lot of folks have looked in the past about moving their money out of the country and how to do that legally and how to establish another residency, how to get another passport. So let's just jump right in. Let's start with the benefits of buying properties overseas. What are some of the big benefits you have seen in property outside of the United States?
Well, there's a number of benefits. I lived in Arizona for a number of years. They're raising taxes if you dare make over the tidy sum of $250,000, which, the way they're printing dollars, it's not really so much anymore. But I lived in Arizona. It's going to be a lot worse, I guess. And California is going to be worse. But what I've been doing for years is investing in properties overseas. I've been living overseas. So the benefits will be, number one, if you think that somebody like Joe Biden or some of these Democrats are going to come and force you to put your retirement account or your money into treasuries, things like that. It's asset protection, makes it harder to take your assets. We don't suggest people do anything shady, but legal asset protection, it's a good idea. Higher returns. You look at some of these returns in some of these places, and especially in some of the places in the U.S., volatile returns. You can get higher, more stable returns potentially, or especially in some of the uncorrelated frontier markets, emerging markets around the world. You can get exposure to foreign currencies as the dollar continues to slump this year. People are saying the dollar will go down more, so you can get exposure more easily and more profitably than with a bank account. You can get not only higher returns, but again, more consistency. You can also get things like you mentioned, residences, citizenships. You buy a property, you get a residence permit. In some cases, like in Turkey, for example, you get a passport within months. And so if you're thinking, I want a place to live where they're going to let me in, they're going to let me spend my time there, potentially a tax-friendly place you can go and live. Or if you want to take it all the way and become a citizen, then this is potentially not in every country, and not in many of the countries that people talk about, like the Caribbean islands. That's rubbish real estate. You don't want to do that. But in places where you can buy real real estate and get a residence or citizenship, you are setting yourself up to have that plan B, that if you want to leave the U.S., you can do so. You can take your money with you, and you can do what I say, which is go where you're treated best.
Yeah,
it's not the U.S. so much anymore.
I know. I love that video you have on YouTube called "What's Your Plan B?" and I think everyone should watch that video and take a look at, what are some of the countries that you like right now?
Well, I like a lot of different countries. I look at frontier markets. Like, I've been a big fan of Cambodia for 8 years. I think a lot of it's become oversaturated, but there's still some areas in the core of Phnom Penh, the capital city. It's doing fantastic. I just had a friend who bought a multifamily, beautiful building, by the way, beautiful river views right in the center, doing great yields. And I mean, it's hard to replicate that. But it's harder and harder to buy as a foreigner, so you have to come in with someone who knows what they're doing. But that's a market I've been very excited about. I think Mexico, you mentioned, is interesting. I'm looking at properties like land, more Plan B stuff in Ecuador. I'm here in Colombia right now. I've been a fan of this market, a little more hands-on potentially. I've been a big fan for about 5 years of the country of Georgia. Got a little bit expensive for me in the last year or two. Now prices have come back down. I'm seeing sub $1,000 a meter properties. And then I'm looking at interesting up-and-coming markets, places like Uzbekistan, Egypt, I think offers a lot of potential. And I mentioned Turkey. I think that there's parts of Istanbul which are very dollar based, that even as the lira goes down, as we've seen recently, you'll see your dollar value preserved. You can get a citizenship there quickly. I think it's an underestimated market that has huge population growth. The country's growing. We're just seeing today. They're probably going to get a big boost with the ability to travel to Europe. So those are some of the markets that I look at. I think there's something for everyone.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I know, having invested out, a lot of people don't think that they can invest out of the country safely. And I know, one of the things that you said in your video is you kind of be leery about who you're doing that through, whether it's a real estate agent. Why is that? And who's the best person to find out information if you're going to go to a country, let's say for the first time? What are the right steps people should take?
Well, my approach, I work with what I say is 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors. We've got a lot of the crypto investors. We got a lot of very high net worth people. And, I do what they do is I go to the best lawyers. I go to a city and I look for the best lawyers. I shop around. I'll probably hire 3 or 4 different lawyers and I'll get to know who's the best one. And I think a lawyer is often a great person to develop a network through. So I've had, let's take George, I mentioned. I think there's probably about 2 good real estate agents in the entire country who don't show up an hour late in cargo shorts. And I've been lucky to find them over the last number of years, both through my attorney. And so if you have a guy who's a killer attorney, not the guy, at the courthouse steps with the cardboard sign, doing residences for $300, but the person who really does a good job, that's a great place to meet. And so I think if you're going to a place for the first time, you have to put some skin in the game. You have to go out and hire people who know what they're doing, because there is in Georgia, in most of the places that I mentioned, either there's no MLS, there's no place to find properties, there's no central repository of places. And if there is, like in Turkey, it's often a scam. In countries like Georgia, you can go on place.ge. We did a study once. We called 100 properties, and I think 82 had already been sold or weren't for sale. I bought a property. I sold it years later. And when I sold it, after I took the listing down, the listing from the previous guy was still up there. People were still calling him about my property. So you have to know in many of these places, you can make a lot better returns. And again, for me, if I'm buying the city center of a place where the Chinese are descending on, that to me is pretty much more stable than Los Angeles, or you look at San Francisco, New York, look at the beating they're taking from COVID. People are fleeing, maybe never coming back. That's a lot more stable as those countries emerge. But, the downside is you have to have that network.
Yeah, you do. And one of the things that I always tell people, I like that you do too, is sometimes when you go into a market and it's unsophisticated, that's actually a good thing, because what happens when you start to see all this technology like Zillow or realtor.com, all those kinds of things, what it does is it kind of balances the playing field. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know what happens a lot of times, and you briefly mentioned it, people pull up these big fancy websites. I've done that. I was like, okay, where do I get a passport? St. Kitts comes up to the top of the list, big fancy website and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot to know below that. Can you talk about how you need to be careful a little bit on some of these websites? And as you mentioned, the word scam, some of these are scams.
Well, I don't necessarily use the word scam, at least maybe in very few cases. But yeah, look at these Caribbean citizenship by investment programs. I've had so many Americans who are seeing the patina come off in the last year, and they're saying, I want a second passport. I've got $50 million. I'm not moving, but in case things get bad, in the first place they look is the Caribbean, St. Kitts, Dominica, Grenada. I'm a St. Lucian citizen, for example. And, in those cases, you can make a donation, or you can buy some really overpriced real estate. So unless you're going to commit to buying a multi-million-dollar villa that is just for your own use, and that's going to be a lifestyle. I've got a guy doing that right now. I'm probably going to do that right now. That can be a good deal. Some guy built, 8 villas. Maybe it's not the best deal in the whole Caribbean, but for that island, it's a normal deal. And you can buy one of his villas because you registered it with the Citizenship Commission. Maybe then, but these deals where you put in, money into a timeshare, and these, forget it, never. Now, you look at a place like Turkey, and I was just at the airport a couple times back in December because I have a property in Istanbul, and you look at the airport and they have all these things that are both mostly designed to bring in the Arab investors. Back when Turkey's citizenship was $1 million, they had all the glossy in-flight magazines. It's like I always say, and then I'll tell to someone on my team, and then I'll take them with me somewhere, and we'll get to the airport and I'll show them the picture. It's always like the top floor, the penthouse, there's a big glass window, and there's a woman in a very cleavagey evening gown looking out the window at all the skyscraper. It's always better. You're being ripped off when you're seeing the evening gown. That's when you run away. But you go to some of these websites in Turkey, for example, Yeah, it's all rubbish, or it's underpriced. It's like a lead generation machine, or it's overpriced. You get these, these brand new buildings. And the problem is, like, you get these Arab folks, investors, who come and, as long as it looks nice, who cares if it's 2 hours outside of Istanbul in traffic? They don't care. You want to be in the city center by and large, or you want to be in the resort, or you don't want to be an hour away. So I think that anything that's overly marketed, what we do is we say, as part of our service to people, you can pay us and we will assist you. And if you're buying a $1 million property, you're going to save a lot of money. If you're doing these golden visa deals, by the way, anything turnkey, never a good deal, or almost never a good deal. So anything too glossy, too turnkey, too designed for a passport or residence program. You see properties in Portugal, 500,000 euro minimum. You buy your property. A lot of those are 420,000 euro properties they marked up, and nobody cares. Well, you should care. It's 80,000 euro. That's 100,000 bucks.
Yeah, if you guys are going to try this, you definitely got to go through somebody who knows what they're doing, because he's right. And it's hard-earned money, and things are going to get marked up. Robert Kiyosaki and I, my business partner on real estate, he says, the bigger the brochure, the worse the deal.
It's very simple, right? And so I've said, for example, you look at a golden visa in Portugal, don't conflate investment with residence. If the residence comes in addition to in the free market, or the passport comes in the free market, fantastic. But when you look at a place like Portugal for a golden visa, why not put money in an investment fund? Why not put money in the bank, right? Well, why are 90% of golden visas in some of these countries not through those options? Because no one makes a commission on it. And so when I tell people about those things, they may have been looking at a program for months, and they just are now realizing, oh, there's an option besides this overpriced real estate.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, because you always hear these horror stories, especially Arizona. We hear it about Mexico all the time. A lot of people get nervous about investing because they think that their land can be taken by another government, which it can. But why does that typically not concern you? And what can people do? For me, I think that the number one thing is the mindset issue here, right? If your mindset, I remember talking to some folks from Australia once, and they said, in our culture, if you're from Adelaide, investing in Sydney is like scary, and people will talk you out of it. It's this insular, isolated culture. And if you think that your country is the only one, what I tell people is the United States, and really any country, they're not number one in anything. You want the freest economy in the world? That's Singapore. So if you go to the list, freest economy, most stable banks, everything. The U.S. does not appear number one in anything except for prison population and perhaps obesity. I think Mexico might be right up there. But, you understand the U.S. I lived in Arizona, so I still understand Arizona. But it's a matter of educating yourself, which I think is why my attorney and expert approach, where you're paying for advice, is a good thing, especially if you're an investor looking to replicate a system. You want to know what's going on. I look at you notice a lot of the places I mentioned are small countries. And what I think that these countries have realized is an increasingly competitive age. They can't afford to be messing around. And so you've seen at Georgia, for example, not so long ago, I've become buddies with the former president, Saakashvili, kind of a controversial guy, but what no one can dispute, took the guy from a Soviet hellhole run by the Politburo guy to the sixth freest economy, or sixth easiest place to start a business in the world, and one of the top 12 freest economies, freer than the U.S. You can buy a property, title transfers in 3 days. It costs $15. You don't need a lawyer. You can have a lawyer, but you don't need one. And, he basically turned the place upside down. That was in your lifetime and my lifetime. And that's the kind of country that wants to bring in investment. The United States, many European countries are what I call legacy brand countries. Remember the debate back in the presidential election last time was how Donald Trump was trying to use eminent domain to take people's property in Atlantic City. There's eminent domain in the United States. I just had a friend. He has a beautiful business, and they come and say, we need your land to expand our tollway. So here's what we're giving you. Yep.
If you don't like it,
happens
go
all
scratch. It's a nice check. And he was kind of happy to get into the business. But do you think this doesn't happen in the U.S.? So, my perspective is you have countries that are looking to bring capital in because they've seen what happens when they don't. And then you have countries where you're from and where I'm from originally that, have ridden the gravy train. It's like the Paris, maybe a dated reference. It's like the Paris Hilton of countries. Someone 4 generations ago did something great, and nobody in power now understands why. And so now they're actively working against it.
Right. So Great content. Thank you. So now we're going to jump over to some red flags that Andrew looks for when investing overseas. And this is for our premium. You can sign up for this and other exclusive questions at kenmcelroy.com/premium. So if you guys want some more information, just go to Andrew's website, Nomad Capitalist, and you can find a lot more of this information on a lot of what he talked about. And of course, much, much more. Andrew, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Always great to be with you.